Good afternoon. It is 2:01 p.m. and I'd like to call this meeting to order of the Financial Oversight and Audit Committee. Representative Chavez, Representative Maldonado Rocha, and myself, Josh Acevedo, are present for this meeting. Representative Ivan Nino asked to be excused from this meeting, and if we could please note that in the agenda minutes, please, I would appreciate that. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Cortinas, lead us. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And right before we get started on item one, I do want to commemorate and remember the lives that we lost 24 years ago. It is September 11th this morning. City officials held a beautiful ceremony to remember all those people that we lost. So I just want to follow that up with a moment of silence before we get started on our agenda. Thank you. So we'll go to item one. Approval of minutes for the Financial Oversight and Audit Committee meeting of August 28, 2025. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve. Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, this passes 3-0. Thank you. Item number 2, presentation and discussion on the city's unfunded pension liabilities for the City of El Paso Employees Retirement Trust and the El Paso Police and Fire Pension Funds. I'll go over to Margarita.
Yes, good afternoon, members of the FOAC. Margarita Marin, Deputy CFO. So before introducing Mr. Strange here to do his presentation, we wanted to provide some context as far as the information that you're going to be receiving today. So a couple of years ago, our CFO, Robert Cortinas, and myself, we started to working on developing a pension funding policy for the city, a supplemental one. And so, as you might heard, our city manager many times, our CFO, it is important that the city continues to have a forward-looking vision and also to make sure that we are proactive, ensuring that the city has a financially stable fund balance. So we engaged our actuarial firm and we started working with them. We also reach out to the pension funds, and we work with Mr. Ash, we work with Mr. Grossman. We received some collaboration from them during this time. So today you're going to be listening Mr. Strange talk about the status of the funding plans, and he's also going to provide information about best practices and how to maintain a healthy pension fund. The work that we have been doing, looking for solutions and strategically addressing, looking forward how we're going to address the growing unfunded pension liability is so important to the city, not only because we have to make sure that we have funds to pay the retirees their benefits when they come due, but also that we eliminate the unfunded pension liability within a reasonable time. And as you know, and you have heard this before too, regarding our bond ratings, this is one of the areas that they look at very, very closely. And we haven't been able to get an upgrade in bond ratings because of our unfunded pension liability. So today, as we listen to this presentation and we bear in mind all the challenges that the city has regarding legislative, the state legislation, federal funding cuts, the bargaining agreements, all of that comes into place, we need to really come together and think how we're going to address this unfunded liability moving forward and ensure that our retirees are able to receive their benefits. So I'm going to introduce Mr. William Strange, and Robert and I are here for any questions that you might have at the end. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome, Mr. Strange, is what I heard.
Yes.
That's an awesome last name.
Thank you.
It's not Dr. Strange, but
No, unfortunately not.
but thank you for making it all the way to El Paso and being with us today.
Yep, glad to be here. Looking forward to it. And if any questions along the way that you have, please, feel free to jump in and stop me. There'll also be a time at the end as well, of course. So to start with the funding of your retirement systems, you have a fixed contribution rate that's set by statute. So what we're going to be talking about today is how you could add an enhancement to that fixed contribution rate that makes your pension systems more responsive to changes in capital markets, so think about sell-offs in the stock market, bond market, changes to benefit provisions. These things can be essentially incorporated automatically into your contribution rate. So that's what we're going to be discussing today. To get started, let's see here. We have 4 things on the agenda, if you will. We've got a big picture, how are retirement systems funded in general. We have some best practices that we take from a variety of different sources. So how to make reforms last, taking a look at pension funding best practices, taking a look at the current situation for El Paso's retirement systems, and then a recommended actuarially determined funding policy for the city to consider. So how are retirement systems funded? You have lots of different types of retirement plans out there. You have governmental plans, you have corporate plans, you have union trustee, Taft-Hartley plans. The one commonality for all of them is this pension formula. Contributions and investment income over a long period of time must be sufficient to pay benefits and expenses. So you can have changes, of course, in how your investments are performing that could have the effect of needing more or less contributions, could have an impact on what you can do from the standpoint of benefit policy. And this is something, the funds and the city all have the ability to impact these portions, these 4 components, in different ways and to varying degrees. There's a lot you can do when you're setting your contribution. There's not as much control as you know over investment income. However, the way that you invest the plan assets obviously can have an effect on that. So let me see. I'm trying to hit the next slide. Uh-oh. It's stuck. Yeah. Oh, there we go. Oh, it jumped forward a few. Hold on. Let me go back. There we go. Okay. So when we think about prudent funding practices for retirement systems, there are a lot of sources we can turn to. The GFOA, there's actuarial standards of practice that govern what credentialed actuaries such as myself do to help employers such as yourselves set up and maintain systems. There's also in Texas the Pension Review Board that has its own set of policies and practices that they'd like to see put in place. And one of the things that comes up constantly is this concept of risk sharing and adjustable plan provision. So that's been emerging in the industry for a while now as a best practice. And looking at this second bullet here, funding and benefit structure needs a mechanism to keep funding formula in balance. Thinking back to that formula that we just talked about, if there's a change in benefit levels, for example, an increase, then there has to be an offsetting component, whether it's contributions or investment income. And as I mentioned, the Texas Pension Review Board strongly recommends, and in some cases, if the pension fund's amortization period is too long, they can require automatic risk-sharing mechanisms be added. So let's take a look at the history of your contribution rates from 2006 to some of the most recent increases in 2022. Your 3 pension funds have different contributions over time. The public safety funds, of course, have converged for the total contribution. And I think the main point here on this slide is to show that the city has taken incremental steps over a period of time to improve the funded position of the retirement systems, which is had a positive effect on what we call the unfunded actuarial accrued liability, which we'll talk about here in a second. So just context on your contribution rates. So unfunded liability. This is the portion of your retirement funds that do not have assets backing them up. These are promises that have been accrued that, so not future benefits, but for past service, for employees, for your public safety that have, for services rendered, accrued a liability that doesn't have a dollar behind it. And what you'll see here is when we add all of them up, it is just short of 700 million as of 2022. And if you look forward over the next several years, you'll see it's declining each year, which is certainly something you want to see with any kind of funding policy. And there is a difference between the three programs, as you'll see on the left. There's different, what we call funding periods. This is a period of time that, if all assumptions are met, you would expect to see each of the funds fully funded, no unfunded liability. So for your employees, that's 16 years, police 19 and 21, and this is after the most recent reduction in the return on asset assumption for your public safety plans from 7.75 down to 7.5. So how does an actuarially determined contribution work? So big picture, this is a simplistic example. You have your, what we call normal costs. So this is, if you're thinking about a defined contribution type plan, such as a 401k, this is the cost of your benefits for the year. You have administrative expenses added to that. You have what we call a amortization payment towards that unfunded liability. And then, of course, we subtract off the member contribution to come up with the portion the city pays. So the biggest policy decision when you're setting up an actuarially determined contribution is, what is your goal for eliminating that unfunded liability? Is it a set period of time, a particular date? That's the biggest policy decision. The rest of it, normal cost, administrative expenses, are minor in comparison to that decision. So getting into a little bit more detail on what this can mean, and we have a customized version of this that I'll talk about in a second, but one of the more common and preferred methods for funding policies has been to have what's called a layered amortization. So you set up your funding policy, and then a year goes by, changes happen, you have investments underperform, outperform, changes in benefit provisions, and you set up a new payment, kind of like a sort of a new mortgage, if you will, over 20 years. So the key with this is to have a plan in place to pay for every dollar of current unfunded liability, and as new unfunded liabilities emerge, having a plan for those. Let me think one more thing. So the contribution rate that the policy you're seeing here is a similar structure that cities that don't have their own retirement systems, the ones that participate in TMRS, have a contribution like this. Okay, let me see here. Okay, so what would this mean for City of El Paso? As I mentioned, we worked with Margarita and Robert to come up with a plan that would eliminate your unfunded liability on the schedule that you're projected to pay off each fund on. And you'd have 20-year layers when unexpected changes happen, but, and this is the important thing, your contributions into the fund would not be less than the statutory fixed rate. Pause for a second. Sorry, my allergies are bad. So the main takeaways here is that if all the assumptions are met, your ADEC is going to produce a similar contribution out of the gate to your current fixed contributions, and then unexpected changes, as I said, would produce new layers. So thinking about any kind of benefit enhancement, this structure makes it so that there's a calculable impact on your contribution if benefits are changed, or if there's a large sell-off in the market, the city's contribution would dynamically, without any additional action, be adjusted to pay for whether it's investment returns that are below expectation or changes in benefits. Some additional features that we've discussed would be when those changes happen and those layers are added, the resulting contribution rate would not be allowed to go up by more than 2% in a year. So and that is a large change. You'd have to have a very big benefit enhancement or a very big sell-off in the market. So there is some smoothing that would happen to make sure that the city's not caught off guard. And then contemplating that when the plans are fully funded, you would revisit the contribution rates for employees. And the last point is future benefit enhancements, again, automatically incorporated into the funding policy each year. So with that, those are the prepared remarks. Sorry, I've got really bad allergies. So would love to answer any questions you have so far.
Thank you. I think I'm going to go to Rep. Maldonado Rocha.
Thank you, Chairman. And thank you so much, Mr. Strange, for coming and presenting this. I have a couple of questions. What triggers would cause benefits or contributions to adjust?
It would be anything from changes in like COLA provisions, changes in the plan formula, could be, like I said, market outperformance, underperformance.
And sorry, I need to take my candy out of my mouth. Sorry about that. Because I have allergies too, so I'm trying to not cough.
Yeah.
Would any of these changes to these provisions require changes to the collective bargaining agreements?
Not my understanding is the answer to that would be no, because you would be looking at this as a supplemental contribution, so above what's already agreed to and set in statute.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And is there any risk or possible litigation from any retirees?
You mean related to putting in a policy like this? No, I think this is a good thing to have, a prudent policy that reacts to changes to the retirement systems. So putting in an actuarially determined contribution like this would be a net positive.
And just one more question. Are there any risks of reduced retirement security for lower paid employees as they're coming in?
No, this would not impact that.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
I appreciate it.
Yep.
So I had a few things. Toward the beginning, you said that cost sharing was a best practice or something. Can you elaborate a little bit more on, is that research-based, or what are the thoughts there that make it such a best practice?
It's experience-based. I mean, you have funds that are better funded, that have these risk-sharing provisions in place, and when there's a, for example, sell-off in the market, funded status declines, you may have a certain just automatic adjustment, such as a COLA, will, go sideways for a year or so to allow the fund to recover, and then the COLA is brought back. So it's reacting to changes in what's going on outside of the control of the fund. And so as a result, that's best practice. And you see the funds that adopt those automatic risk-sharing provisions tend to be funds that have the best long-term stability and sustainability through market cycles.
That makes sense. And I think I really liked your presentation and how you set everything out. It really gave us a good picture of what this means in a very short presentation, which I appreciate as well.
Yeah.
But I think the thing that I'm kind of looking at right here is, okay, this is great information, but getting to a policy is where it's a very rocky road. And I think from my experience on this, I think it's absolutely important to support our police and fire, but then also how do we balance that with being fiscally responsible? And that's how I look at this. And so are there any case studies that you could refer us to or something on how you've seen this work in other places, or any things that you have that you could share with us? Just because I feel over the last several months there's been a lot of finger pointing, and we get stuck in the middle as a FOAC, as a council, and I just want to get to a better place and have better practices in that sense.
Yeah, so within the state, you can look to Austin as another example. They put in a policy similar to this as part of an overall objective of, just improving the long-term sustainability of their retirement systems. And I think that just in general, having this policy is going to only result in better long-term outcomes for the funds.
Okay.
Yep.
So Austin, do you know when they did that? I'm not trying to put you on the spot.
Within the last 5 years, I believe.
Okay. The last 5 years. Okay, perfect.
Yep.
I think that's all I had. Representative Chavez?
Thank you, Representative Acevedo. Thank you, Mr. Strange, for your presentation.
Glad to be here.
I'm going to give you a little bit of a break, if that's okay with you. I just wanted to see if we could hear from Robert Cortinez.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Regarding just, how this process got started and your rationale for the determinations that you have come to today.
Sure, thank you. So we've been working with Milliman now for about 1.5 years, almost 2 years, on trying to develop this funding policy. We've had a lot of back and forth. They've been very helpful in trying to customize what that policy will look like. One of the challenges we ran into last year was obviously what happened with the police and fire pension fund and the COLA that was implemented, because that changes everything as far as the calculations, what the impact's going to be on the unfunded liability. You saw the nice, pretty slide that showed the unfunded portion of the liability going down. One of the things that's happened now with that COLA is that we don't know the exact impact. And so we need to work with the Police and Fire Pension Fund so that we fully understand what that impact is going to be, so we can incorporate that into what financially it may cause on the city side. Because if we're saying essentially that we're going to, quote unquote, guarantee that we pay that actuarially determined contribution amount, obviously as you're increasing the benefit and not increasing the contributions, that means that money has to come from somewhere. I mean, I think William did a really good job of highlighting that very simple chart that has those 4 boxes. If you change any of those, it impacts the calculation. And so that's something we need to work with the Police and Fire Pension Fund on, of addressing, one, understanding the impact of that, not only the COLA, but also with the recent change that they're going to be implementing on their investment return. So they're lowering their investment return from 7 3/4 down to 7.5. So what does that mean? That means the unfunded pension is going to increase, and the years to amortize are going to increase as well, which may have some impact on what we may recommend as far as the years, sort of as the base level that William talked about. So there's still a lot of work to be done. I mean, I'm pretty comfortable with where we're at. William and his team over at Milliman have done a really good job of of providing their expertise and their experience. They've worked with plenty of cities, not only in Texas, but across the nation. I think it's just going to take some sit down with the two pension funds and try to come to an agreement on ultimately what's in the best interest of not only the city, but also of the retirees. I mean, that's really what it's about, is solidifying and sustaining the long-term retirements for our employees, whether public safety or civilian.
Representative, I just wanted to add that I believe it was in 2022, as a result of the strategic planning process, council really have been focusing on trying to think about how we can increase our bond rating, because that, of course, increases our interest rates. And so they really were looking at, over the last couple of years, what are those things that we really should be focusing our efforts on that could improve that standing? And pension was one of them. So I believe we started around that time frame. And it was written out that they really wanted to figure out how we can do that, and then other things were sort of happening with the pensions.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So it's the unfunded liabilities that's identified in the strategic plan. So one of them you've heard us talk a lot about on the debt and how we're managing our debt. The other unfunded liability is the pension. And so this is something we've been putting a lot of work into. It's going to take a little bit more time. You're right, Dr. Acevedo. I mean, it's not going to be easy, but we're pretty comfortable with where we're at. We think we can get there.
And would this be an evaluation that's done on a yearly basis?
Yes.
Okay, and then we would have to basically take that into account before doing the budget?
Yes.
And you would be basically maybe reserving something
And that's
to
yes,
fund the
it's-
policy?
And so you're asking a lot of the detailed questions that
Yeah.
we've been putting a lot of thought, and it's going to take some time to get there, because obviously there's a lot of unknown and uncertainty, particularly at the state level. I mean, we saw a lot of different bills that could potentially impact the city's ability to do what we need to do to fund the services that we provide, not only for our current employees, but for the retirees as well. And so the city, on an annual basis, just for public safety, spends about $38 million on pension, just the city's contribution. And that goes up by about $3.5 million every year, because wages are going up. We're adding more officers and more firefighters, so that means our pension costs are going up. So yes, we need to be very cautious, and we'll be very thoughtful on what that recommendation will be to ensure that we're not impacting the city financially, but at the same time, again, taking care of the fund. I mean, I think ultimately the goal is to preserve the benefits for the retirees and adjusting the unfunded liability that we have.
Absolutely, thank you. And
You're
thank you for the work, thank you.
And as I was thinking through what you were saying, and this could be to either one of you, but is there a best practice for coming to an agreement in a policy like this to get information from one source for an actuary health or / forecast? Because I think that also became a thing where we were seeing one thing with one actuary and then we were seeing something else with another one. So I think that created a lot of conflict. So how can we mitigate that conflict?
Well, so in all of the major markets in the state, you do tend to have a different actuarial consultant advising the fund and advising the city in some capacity. There's some required audits under Texas statute called 802. So there's some kind of required city sort of independent actuarial audits of the funds. But it is unfortunately, it'll probably always be the case that the city would have an advisor and the funds would have their advisor, and ultimately trying to just make sure we're all working off the same facts. May have different conclusions about what the public policy should be around it, but just make sure that there's agreement on the facts, because I think when you have that, it's much easier to come to the right policy. Because if you're arguing over the facts, you never get to the part of developing the solution. So.
Okay, so I guess just from what I'm getting from what you're saying is that's going to be a critical component as we develop the policy to see how we
Correct.
go about that in the future.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And Robert, do you know what the timeline looks like for this? What your thoughts are on this?
I can't give you I mean, we're going to continue working on it. I mean, we've put a lot of work into it already. I mean, I think we're at the point now where it's just working with the two pension funds that we have.
Okay.
And trying to hash this out and get to a point where we're all comfortable with what the future is for adjusting the unfunded liability. I mean, it's going to be a compromise, right? So we're going to have to get to consensus and agreement with the two pension funds on the joint policy, but I'm confident we can get there.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Any other discussion? No? Okay. Well, thank you for joining us, Mr. Strange. This was an insightful presentation. Really
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Yep.
This item doesn't have any action on it, so we'll move on to item number 3, discussion and action on the results of the vehicle allowance and take-home cars project P 2025-02. Miguel.
Good afternoon, everybody. Okay, there we go. So we'll be discussing the vehicle allowance and take-home project that we completed. There we go. The objectives of this audit were to review the vehicle allowance payments for compliance with city policy, determine if city employees who received a vehicle allowance are not assigned a take-home car. Make sure you can get either one or the other, but not both. And review policies for the use and assignment of take-home cars. Determine if the usage of take-home cars is monitored. We had conducted an audit originally back in July of 2024, where we discovered there's some the vehicle allowance policy required some updates. Some items were not had not been updated or included, and that was the objective of this review, to make sure that the policy was updated. Okay, the scope. We looked at fiscal years 2024 and 2025, which included reviewing, city policies and procedures, reviewing the vehicle allowance recipients as of January 11th, 2025, interviewing fire department management and staff, and we reviewed fire department. We reviewed the fire department due to the high number of vehicle allowance recipients and assigned take-home cars. So at that time, we did this review. We had 93 vehicle allowance recipients, and we obtained a listing of the fire department employees receiving a vehicle allowance, and a list of those fire department personnel that had a take-home vehicle. And we compared both lists, make sure they're only receiving one or the other, like I mentioned. Nope. Here's our observation. The first bullet here in our observation actually is the positive one. On March 13th, the City of El Paso updated the vehicle allowance program policy to include municipal court judges, fire department personnel, additional employees authorized and approved to receive vehicle allowances per the city manager. We also ensured that vehicle allowance payments were proper to staff. We did not identify any employee that is both receiving a vehicle allowance and a take-home car at the same time. And the second bullet is actually was an area for improvement that we noticed. We noticed that there's no citywide program for monitoring the use of take-home cars. Currently, city departments manage their own fleet, so they have each department has a fleet of vehicles that they assign take-home cars. Each one manages their own program, so each one has their own, set of policies and procedures. So what we noticed, there's no citywide program to cover everything, to make sure everything's the same. Oops, there we go, recommendation. So our recommendation was for city management should decide if a citywide policy should be created for departments to adhere to, or to continue allowing each department to self-manage their fleet. And a response from city management. This is their corrective action plan. The Human Resources Department is creating a take-home vehicle policy to clearly outline the rules and regulations regarding assignment, use, and accountability of city vehicles. This policy aims to ensure consistency, promote fairness, and provide clear guidance to both employees and supervisors about expectations and responsibilities. Additionally, a process will be established in conjunction with the policy. Through this policy and process, each city department will have the authority to manage the assignment of their fleet vehicles accordance with the policy, and this approach will ensure consistency and fairness across the city while allowing departments the flexibility to address their specific operational needs. Cool. So in conclusion, we did, based on this audit, the results of this audit, and the vehicle allowance program policy was updated and was implemented March 13, 2025. And then, like we just stated, there is a process for issuing take-home cars because each department has their own process, but it's just, there's no citywide policy to make sure everybody, conforms to a minimum, I guess, standard, you can say. And the requested action is to accept the results of the audit.
Thank you, Miguel. I do have some discussion from Representative Chavez.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Miguel. Did the audit really focus on the take-home policy? Because I didn't see any findings on vehicle allowance, or did you not find anything to report in terms of vehicle allowance?
A vehicle allowance, what we're reporting on is that the city management updated their policies and procedures, which were, like I mentioned, we had conducted an audit a year prior, and we found some items lacking. City management and city HR updated the city policies, which is positive.
Okay.
We looked at to ensure that city employees were not receiving both a vehicle allowance payment and a take-home vehicle, because you cannot, double dip, and we didn't find any issues with that. So,
Okay. Could you maybe verbally go over the vehicle allowance things that you had suggested or that they're working on? I wasn't here prior, right? So
Okay.
I wasn't part of those conversations,
Sure.
but because this audit says vehicle allowance, I don't know what that means.
sure.
Thank you, Miguel.
We conducted an audit of the vehicle allowance program back in July of 2024. That's the date of our report.
Okay.
When we looked at that policy, we identified some gaps. The policy back then required municipal court judges to receive vehicle allowance payments according to the, I forget the name forget the name? I blanked out, I'm sorry. There weren't, the budget resolution, sorry. Sorry, I forget the name. So the budget resolution, when we reviewed the budget resolution at that time, we noticed that the budget resolution did not address municipal court judges. So that was something we recommended. The policy says to follow the budget resolution, but the budget resolution is blank or silent. So city management went back and updated the budget resolution to address that. There were some positions that were receiving the vehicle allowance that weren't included in the policy. So the policy was updated to include those particular city positions.
Okay, but that's already been done?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and those updates have already been completed,
Has
basically?
been corrected, yes.
Okay, so right now, in this audit today, we're just focusing on the take-home?
Take home,
cars?
yes, and
Okay.
the policy, yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you very much for that clarification. I appreciate it.
So just kind of based on what Representative Chavez is saying here, I think it is a little misleading to title this vehicle allowance and take-home cars. And I think I've said this quite a bit over the last several months, that I don't like these follow-up audits. I think we need a cap, and a cap is sufficient, and it has the memo, and it's signed by all parties, and I think that is important, because it gets into these situations where it makes it a little confusing. You're coming in and you're saying, okay, we're doing vehicle allowance and take-home cars, but then now you read through the report and then it's like, okay, well, they did a policy, but then it's not very clear. At least I didn't see in the report where it says we did an audit in July of 2024 and now we're following up. And since we did that audit, a new policy has been implemented. So we're not really touching that. The only thing that we're touching here is to make sure that people are not double dipping. And it took the discussion here today to get to that conclusion. And it makes sense. But then these reports need to kind of stand on their own, and there can't be holes in them. When a member of public is reading through these audits, it needs to be completely secure and people understand and they don't walk away with more questions than answers. And so I really hope that once we get a permanent auditor in place, we really move toward a cap rather than these follow-up audits. And then in this one, you did a follow-up audit, but then it's not really clearly stated. So I almost feel like you should probably edit this to be a little bit more clear to answer what Representative Chavez is saying. That way, another member of the public isn't going to have the same response to the audit, right? I think it's a very simple audit, and it makes sense, but the history of it is really important to really delineate that. And I remember Ms. Wiggins, that's why she came running. I was like, she's going to come save the day. She worked hard on that policy, and we discussed it for a good while, and now it's in place. But I think making that more clear would strengthen this report as a whole. And then the other thing that I was going to tell management is, in the management response, the memo from the Department of Human Resources says that there's going to be a take-home vehicle policy, but it's not clear when that policy is going to be implemented. And I think it's really important to also include in these responses a date that you're going to do that. That way everybody is held accountable at that point. So if we could also update that before this is sent to council, I would really appreciate that. Representative Maldonado Rocha.
Thank you, Chairman. And I just have a couple of questions. Miguel, thank you very much for the presentation and your findings. What mechanisms, if any, and this may be more to Ms. Wiggins' part, but are in place to track this vehicle use and then ensure compliance regarding that use? Is that also part of the policy that was implemented?
Good afternoon, Mary Wiggins, Chief Human Resources Officer. So the past policy was for the vehicle allowance, which is, only specific positions can hold that. So it was making sure that we were consistent with who was receiving it was in that policy. This particular policy that we're going to create is going to be in reference to the take-home vehicles alone. Right. Now, for that policy, what we're going to do is we're going to write a policy that is going to be organization-wide, but it's going to talk to points such as what you should or shouldn't do with the vehicle. Mm-hmm. You should not be stopping, at the store on your way home. You need to, make sure you park it in a safe location. Make sure if they have take-home vehicles, it's a benefit, so we tax them a certain tax. So it's going to address all of that. As far as how each vehicle is allotted in each department, that is still going to be, managed by the department, but we are going to coordinate that they create those processes to have those that were right now. They're not written, and so we need them written so that we can be able to refer back to those. But each department has different operational needs, and we don't know, what each one has. And so we're going to ask them, in the policy will state that each department will manage their own fleet, but that they will have processes in place in their individual departments to reference what that is.
So thank you for that, Ms. Wiggins. And let me ask you, do these vehicles have GPS in them?
To my knowledge, I don't know if anybody, they do. Chief, yours? Some of them have them.
Some of them have them. Because I worry about I know that each department will be responsible for their own kind of enforcement of it. Mm-hmm. I just want to be sure that it's standardized and equal for all departments more than anything, based on their needs, because every department is different.
Exactly.
Okay. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Any other discussion? Okay, I do want to make a motion, just so it is on the record, that we accept the results. I move to accept the results of the Vehicle Allowance and Take-Home Cars Project P 2025-02, incorporating feedback from the FOAC today that includes more clarity on what we did with vehicle allowance here, and for management to clearly state when the new policy will be in place.
Okay, we'll make those edits.
I second that.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, this passes 3-0. And we'll move on to the final item of the agenda today. Item number 4, discussion and action on the results of the on-call services agreement audit A 2024-08. Turn it over to you, Liz.
Good afternoon, Liz DeLao with the Internal Audit Department. So I will be presenting the results of the on-call services agreement audit. The objectives of the audit were to determine how the on-call contracting process is administered, identify how CID determines when to use on-call contracting, determine if CID has controls in place to monitor compliance, and determine if accounts payable transactions for on-call services are processed according to city policy. For our scope of FY23 and FY24, it included reviewing 5 active on-call agreements for professional services awarded to 18 consultants, conducting interviews with CID personnel, reviewing CID policies and procedures, analyzing a sample of invoices for on-call professional services, and conducting a review of CID's monitoring processes. For finding 1, we identified that CID's internal procedures for the selection of professional services needed to be updated. Some of the updates required adding an effective date, updating the job titles, updating the web links, and updating the procedures to reflect current practices in place unique to the selection of the on-call consultants. For our recommendation, we recommended that CID should update their procedures to include an effective date, updating the job titles and web links, and updating the procedures to reflect that current practices in place reflect the selection of on-call consultants. For management's response, so I'll kind of condense the first findings response. So in response, management indicated how they updated their procedures to include updating job titles, adding an effective date, updating procedures for the selection of on-call consultants, outlining the process for the debarment and indebtedness checks, updating the documented process for monitoring task orders, and developing a schedule to identify phases included within each contract. For finding 2, a review of the files for 18 on-call consultants selected for review identified the following. 18 of the files did not contain evidence of a debarment check, 12 did not contain evidence of a verification of indebtedness, and 3 consultants did not submit all required certificates of insurance. So we recommended that CID should ensure that debarment checks, indebtedness verifications, and insurance policy requirements are conducted and documented in the on-call agreement consultant files. For management's response, they responded that checks were not consistently saved in the appropriate files. To strengthen the procedure, staff will reference sam.gov and Seamless Docs form and guideline to properly save documentation. Finding 3, we conducted a review of 9 invoices paid by CID and identified that 4 out of the 9 were not paid within the 30 calendar days. So we're just recommending that invoices be paid within the 30 days of receiving the invoice. Management responded that within our processes, we ask all vendors to submit invoices to pay application at elpasotexas.gov. Staff has been assigned to critically evaluate the application status, and this change of assignment to the CIPs has resulted in invoices paid within the 30 days of receipt. For finding 4, additional review of the 9 invoices identified that 3 out of the 9 invoices did not contain documentation to confirm tasks were completed by the established deadlines. 2 of the 9 invoices could not be matched to the consultant's fee proposal hourly rates, and 1 out of the 9 invoices did not contain the total project budget, amount billed to date, and percentage of completion as required by their on-call agreement. So we just recommended that CID should ensure that documentation supports tasks were completed by the established deadlines, invoices match the consultant's fee proposal hourly rates or notate the cause of a variance, and that invoices include details required by the on-call services agreement. For management's response, they cited 2 of the sections of the on-call agreements and stated that procedures identified to address the required documentation, training will be provided to remind staff of policy that is in place. So in conclusion, CID met the audit objectives in the following areas: establishing and documenting procedures for selecting on-call service providers, establishing proper internal controls to monitor compliance. They did not meet the objectives in the following areas: ensuring procedures reflect current practices in place, processing accounts payable transaction for on-call services in accordance with city policy and on-call agreements, and ensuring that department checks, indebtedness verifications, and insurance confirmations are conducted and documented in the consultant's files. So our requested action is to accept the results of the on-call services agreement audit and forward the audit report to City Council for action.
Thank you, Liz. I'll move us to discussion. Representative Maldonado Rocha.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Liz, for the information on the audit. I have a couple of questions. Originally, when this audit was listed to do, right, in your process, was this considered a high-risk item?
As far as in our audit plan for the year, yes.
This was considered high risk.
Yes.
And were the results that you found considered high risk as well?
Yes.
Okay. And so then, moving on to another question, I know that there's an updated procedure that's in place. Is that my understanding from management's response?
Yes, since the audit took place, there has been update to the procedures, but we just haven't confirmed.
So nothing has been formally adopted yet? Or do you know? Is there anybody that would be able to answer that on the audit?
Probably Ms. Hernandez will be
Thank you.
the better source.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Good afternoon, Yvette Hernandez.
Thank you.
With regards to the updated policy, we have that and we could submit it over to Elizabeth and the team for their review. That was done concurrently with their findings that were reported to us. And
you.
with regards to formalizing, we don't have a city policy. We just have the standard operating procedures saved within our SharePoint.
Okay, and thank you for that, Yvette. I appreciate it. Has this been communicated to all relevant staff?
Yes, we've already hosted our training with all project managers.
Okay, and so it's specific to project managers?
Yes.
Is that, okay, is that the piece that was updated as far as the staff names? Or their
The staff
positions?
names, we've had a bit of turnover in this position. So we looked at the job required specifications. This was prior to the audit, and we changed the name of the job position. We failed to update that in our SOP.
Okay, so
So
once...
it's already been updated, though.
So once all of this is updated, then are you responsible for all these changes to make sure that the implementation is done? Or
The
who's
implementation is complete.
So
Yes, ma'am.
you're okay. And then what controls are you putting in place to keep these items from happening again?
So one of the things that they made mention of SAM.gov, that
Right.
website was updated, and then also created a file structure within our SharePoint so that all the files are shared for each individual on-call contract. So when going back to see that the work was done, not only was the work done, but it's also saved to file to verify that they had checked.
So let me ask you, what tools or systems do you have in place to kind of track the deadlines, the deliverables, the review periods, all of that goes into that process? What does that look like?
We're relying heavily on Monday.com.
On Monday.com? And are there any consequences that are in place for not following through on those processes?
I think it would be calling in the staff, working with them, making sure that they understand the deliverables and deadlines that are outlined within our sections.
Thank you. I only asked that because it was listed as a high-risk audit, and then the findings were also high risk. So I want to make sure that we address that piece of it. So knowing that there's mechanisms in place to be able to identify those a lot quicker, those issues a lot quicker, but also knowing that later on down the line, if should there be another issue, that there are also those consequences in place. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes,
thank
thank
you,
you.
Yvette.
Representative Chavez.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Liz, for your findings. And thank you to Representative Maldonado Rocha. I think people know that this is something that is important to us. It's been brought to our attention by our community that, there is some improvement needed, and now this audit basically just solidifies it a little bit more. So I'm going to go through your draft document, Liz, and I'm just going to go through a few pages here. So on page 2, where it says the Texas Local Government Code, professional services don't fall under the Texas Local Government Code, right? They fall under Texas Government Code? On page 2.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think we're citing the wrong code there. I think
Okay.
professional
double-check.
services falls under Texas Government Code and not local government code. Okay, and then this next question is going to be for Ms. Hernandez. We mentioned SAM.gov right now. Thank you, Yvette, for coming to the podium. Is SAM.gov the appropriate place for professional services, or is that just for contractors?
It also has for the consultant. So specifically what they looked at is all the on-call contracts for design services, and all of the firms are registered with SAM.gov, and so you'll see the listing once you go to that appropriate website. So the one that we had, the link was expired.
Okay, so that is the link that professional services uses as well as contractors?
As consultants? Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do professional services use IonWave?
No, they do not. That's
And-
only for
And
contractors.
why don't we use IonWave for them?
Generally, CID has overseen most of the professional services procurement. We have a database where we reach out to the consultants, and we also make sure to advertise projects that are upcoming so that they are aware.
And what's that database called?
It's on our website. And
So
the database is created in our Outlook.
Okay. I'm just trying to figure out what the best way to use professional services is, because we just identified that this is a high-risk area for the city of El Paso. The audit reveals that we're maybe could improve on paying people that we're doing business with on time. I think that's extremely important to be better partners.
That has already been addressed. So we have the creation of an application payment log. All invoices are submitted to a specific email that is routed to an individual who then logs it in. It is the project manager's responsibility to look through the documentation, review it with the consultant, and get it paid in a timely manner. We have someone assigned specifically that they review it every week. So from the past 30 days, we're now paying all invoices, vendors, consultants, and contractors within 15 days.
Okay, and there's going to be an audit on that to make sure that we are doing
If
that?
they would like to follow up, but that's already
Okay.
been in place.
Okay, so how are we time-stamping things that people are using for professional services? If we're not using IonWave, how are we making sure that we're being transparent in that sense? Is there a system?
I'm not sure of what you're stating that IonWave does specifically.
Well, IonWave is a platform, right, that
Mhm.
usually contractors use, but if we don't have one specifically for professional services, how do we make that process more transparent?
They have a designated email AE selection, and so all emails are, when we receive them, we know that they've submitted their application prior to the deadline cutoff.
Okay. Liz, did you review this process for on-call services? That wasn't part of your scope of work?
No, ma'am.
Okay. That's something that I would be interested in seeing because, it's not as maybe, just transparent, like I just mentioned, as other systems are in place for contractors. And so I think that's definitely some area that we could maybe consider improving for people that do professional services that want to partner with the city of El Paso. I also went online to look at some of the postings that you have available. And I just want to mention that the memorandums that we have currently online list the previous council as members. And so I just would respectfully ask for that to be updated with the new council members on memorandums that are listed from August 28th of this year. So that would be great. Thank you, Liz, for the audit. Thank you, Yvette.
And so I don't know where I'm going yet, but you could sit. I'm kind of looking through this audit, and I'm going to go back to my soapbox on corrective action plans. When you have such a high risk audit that yields high risk results, the corrective action plan is such a great way of making sure that everything is being monitored and that there's an agreement between management and internal audit for things to happen and for things to change. Everything that management has been saying throughout this item is great, and it's awesome. They've committed to it through the management response, but more of a documentation for accountability for the public's knowledge would really bring that into the fold to know when the training took place, right? For example, I think that's important to say we identified all these things and we just heard from Yvette, oh, we already did the training, or we already did this other thing and we did this other thing. And so I'm not expecting you to come and tell us it happened on July 28th, but or whatever date it was, but I think having that with those milestones would give us a sense of relief as we bring accountability to this organization, right? And overall, I also see it as a way of adding more hours to the audit plan. We're shifting that to corrective action plans instead of doing a follow-up audit a year from now, or you're constantly in conversation with management on how these procedures are moving forward. Now, in regard to some of these audit results, a lot of it seemed to be really basic things, basic administrative things that are pretty simple to do, but we were not seeing it in many different cases, right? Department, city indebtedness, insurance policy, payments, things like those easy things that should be done, but they're not being completed. And at the end of the day, they are so important to the whole process, right? And so in your experience in going through getting this report together, do you know why any of this wasn't happening?
Part of the reason was that there was staff turnover, so that contributed to it.
Okay, so turnover, there was major turnover then for a lot of these things to be dropped. Okay. And how did you pick which contracts to look at? You had a great sample. I'm just kind of wondering a little bit more behind the scenes on how you picked these.
Okay, so our population was 13 on-call services managed by CID. We selected a sample of 5 agreements. The 5 agreements had a total of 18 consultants.
Okay, so you went with number of consultants, and the more consultants, the riskier. Is that how it kind of went?
With this case, some of them didn't have like POs issued yet or invoices paid, so that's how we gauged it.
Okay. Okay, that makes sense. And the reason for late payments, that was also because of turnover?
Late payments, I probably would say that the turnover does contribute to that, yes.
Okay. Is there maybe management want a response to this? Or respond to this? I'm sorry. Mr. Cortinas.
So one of the things we've been working on with not only CID, but all of our city departments is ensuring they've got SOPs in place so that if there is turnover, if you're short on staff, that there are those processes and procedures identified. So we're working with several departments right now with the comptroller's office to ensure that those departments are implementing those things. So, I mean, I think you heard Yvette already mentioned that they've already implemented some of those things. So I'll let her add anything that she may want to add, but I don't think that it's one department versus another. I mean, obviously this is a little bit unique with what's being discussed and reviewed today, but it's important that all of our departments have those processes and procedures in place for how they're handling turnover, if individuals go on FMLA, ensuring that there's backups and alternatives in place to be able to address the operational duties.
Yeah.
So the original process in place is submitting, all consultants and contractors have the same email that they submit all their invoices, and then it's distributed to the project managers, and then it goes through the review process of their division manager to ensure that all the payments are correct, and then it goes through processing. So that was the baseline. We realized that not only through the audit process, but working with our finance department, they had also sent out an email saying, how come these are more than 30 days? So we put in an additional safety measure of having one person specifically reviewing when they get logged in and when they are actually processed. One of the things that we did notice is when a contractor or a consultant, there were conversations. So let's say it got logged in yesterday, the 10th, and right now the project manager is reviewing it and he has questions or concerns and then gets pushed back. The new submittal date is not reflected. And so that's one thing that we do need to change, because there are some back and forth. I'm not saying that happens for all, but there is a certain instance that does. And so now we're recording the second submittal and counting the 30 days from that as well, to help give a better gauge of us processing those in a timely manner.
And in the same kind of area, were there companies that submitted invoices late and it was kind of their own fault, or they always submit on time?
I would have to go back to specifically, but I will say, I will be honest, we were not processing as quickly as we should have. Okay. But with this second set of eyes and tracking and meeting on a weekly basis, I can confidently say that we're within 15 days, not 30.
Okay, that's great to hear. I just worry a lot about reputation, and if there's a lot of companies out there that are saying, it took 60 days, it took 50 days to get payment. I don't know if you've heard anything anecdotally.
No, what I wish I would have heard is the improvement in the turnaround that they've seen.
Okay.
I think that's significant to get it to 15 days.
Yeah, that's a big
just
deal.
by this one change in our process.
Okay. All right, thank you. We will go back to Representative Chavez.
Thank you, Chairman. Liz, so I just wanted to ask you, are you going to be doing like a follow-up, or you don't usually do that on these types of audits, just to make sure that the recommendations are being implemented?
Yes, we usually schedule a
Okay.
follow-up. Right now, we have it scheduled for FY26.
Okay. On page 6, it talks about a policy of the city to refuse to do business with a contracting entity or any owner of 5% or more of such entity who is indebted to the city. I would appreciate it if you could just verify that none of the people that you've audited are indebted to the city, or that that's not taking place in your follow-up.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I'll just jump in. What Representative Chavez is saying kind of reminds me of Ms. Neiman telling us you can't get money from people that are suing you, and having some similar process in place where we are kind of flagging these things. Yeah. Okay, and Rep. Maldonado Rocha.
Thank you, Chairman. One more question, and this may be for Ms. Hernandez or for you, Liz, but is there now like a checklist that's in place that will be, let's say, in the file with each consultant, to know that, yes, they've already met their insurance requirements, they've done this, that the project manager will be able to go through? Is that, I'm trying to envision what that looks like.
The project manager does not go through those checks. That is handled by the business contracts manager.
Okay.
And so it's not a checklist per se, but the file structure that has been set up ensures that the documentation are found within each of the folders.
Okay, perfect. So there'll be less reason to have any of these findings in the future?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Sorry, and I just keep everybody, not you, Yvette, but everybody says something. I'm like, oh, now I'm thinking about something else. But I just wanted to say, based on what Rep. Chavez said earlier on citing the government code, if you could get with Ms. Neiman, Liz, to just verify that what you put in there is factual, I would appreciate that.
Yes.
Okay, any other discussion? Okay, is there a motion for this? Okay, there's a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, this item does pass 3-0. And we have reached the end of the agenda. Is there a motion, or should we stay here a little while?
Motion to adjourn.
There's a motion and a second to adjourn this meeting. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, it does pass 3-0. This meeting is adjourned at 3:11 p.m. Thank you so much to everybody that put work for this meeting.